What is up, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the SEC on the College Huddle. I am your host, Michael, from the Vol Fanatic Show. Tonight, I am joined by Skeeter from the Woods Water Mizzou podcast, Landon from the My Dawgs Are Barking podcast, and Trey from the Doghouse podcast. So, guys, appreciate you coming on.
Skeeter, I'll start you. How you doing tonight, man?
You cut out there. Who were you talking to?
Skeeter, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, Michael. Hey, I think maybe your mic came unplugged on your computer because now you're sounding a little bit further away. But yeah, I'm doing good. Appreciate you having me on. Excited to talk with Landon and Trey and yourself as well, and talk a little SEC football.
Awesome, man. So, Landon, how about you? Mike sounding a little bit better now.
Still sounding a little bit further away, almost like you're halfway underwater. But while you're working on that, yeah, man, we're doing great. So excited to be able to talk tonight. And look, this is one of the best parts of the year. We just got finished with March Madness and the excitement that has, and now we're creeping a little bit more and more into the best time of year, which is the fall for college football. So it is a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. And Trey, how you doing tonight, man?
Yeah, doing well. Excited to be on here. This is actually my first, actually getting an interviewed podcast instead of me interviewing people. So really excited. But yeah, really excited to talk a little post spring game, and as Josh Pate on Late Kick says, the off season. So we can kind of talk about all the speculation, rumors, and we got Porter Palooza going on. So yeah, good stuff to talk about.
Yeah, a lot of stuff that we can get into. So, Skeeter, we'll start with you. Give us a little bit of a spring practice update from Mizzou. I know that your spring game was actually early compared to a lot of other teams this year. What did you see and hear this year from Mizzou spring practice?
Well, we do ours early, which makes a lot of sense because we're the most furthest north and furthest west team, furthest northwest team in the SEC. So let's have it in winter or spring, as you want to call it. But it was good. It was we did something different this year that's not common for spring games. Most spring games you have your starters versus your 2s and 3s and whatnot. We actually did a player draft, and so each team had captains, and then they drafted players from that. And so Brady Cook didn't have a starting receiver. The offensive line was all split up, so everybody kind of got to play around with different personnel, and it added a little bit more excitement into it, but it was good. I don't take a whole lot into it. Everybody coming out of their spring game feels like they're national champions or national champion contenders. So I try not to put too much stock into it, and now it's just sitting here watching the transfer portal go hot.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what about the upcoming recruiting class, the 2024 class for I guess it'd be the 2025 class? I mean, way too early for Mizzou. How's it looking right now? I know right now I'm looking on 247 Sports, and it's like y'all have got the number 21 overall class in here right now. Or was that this past season?
That would be this past season. Right now, we only have one commit that I know of off the top of my head, but it's Matt Zollers, quarterback out of Pennsylvania, picked us. But it's with recruiting this time of the year, I don't put a whole lot of stock into verbal commitments anymore until they actually sign a paper and it goes in through the fax machine. It's just you kind of watch it and keep your eyes and ears open. But, man, there's a lot that changes from now until December.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's an interesting take on the spring game, too. I actually kind of like that, just hearing that kind of a player draft. You get you get players that normally wouldn't play together right away. That's pretty neat. But, anything's better than what Ole Miss did in their spring game because they didn't have one. I mean, basically just a bunch of carnival games out there. So I figured you would like that one, Landon. So Landon,
you're not lying at all. That's so true.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of Ole Miss fans that they were just heated about that entire thing because they're looking forward to watching their team actually get out there on the field and didn't get to see that. So
yeah, and it's understandable trying something new. It's kind of like the NBA trying to do something new with the All-Star game to generate excitement because sometimes spring games can just be kind of boring. So I mean, kudos in that sense, but kind of a swing and a miss from my point of view at least. I did want to ask Skeeter, thinking about Missouri this year, and now that you've kind of gone through the spring game, what is it like, or I guess what are Missouri fans thinking in terms of expectations? Because Missouri's 2023 was just remarkable. And now you're coming into this season. How are people feeling? Are you nervous to live up to the hype, or is it kind of at the highest peak it's been in a while?
No, I think being led by Eli Drinkwitz, he gives a moxie to the fan base that we kind of soak in. Then also you look at the schedule, and it's very favorable. Playoffs expanding to 12 teams. There's a lot of good momentum for the fan base behind this team that we should be able to compete for the playoffs. Um, it would be very disappointing to end the year and not be ranked. Something would have to go bad from what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of looked at the schedule a little bit last week. Unfortunately, had some technical difficulties. We will probably try to re-record that, but I mean, the schedule is very favorable for Mizzou this year. I mean, you do get Alabama in Tuscaloosa, which is a tough draw, but you're not playing teams like Georgia this year. You're not playing Tennessee. You're not playing Texas. You did draw Oklahoma, but isn't that a home game this year?
It is home game.
Yeah, so I mean, you get that game at home, so you've got a favorable schedule. Trey, do you have any thoughts on Missouri or any questions for Skeeter on Missouri?
Yeah, I just wanted to give props to Skeeter in Missouri with Eli Drinkwitz. You guys probably pushed us to the brink, two of the biggest physical games. I mean, we barely got out of there 2 years ago in Columbia. You guys had us. We had to gut it out. And then last year, man, you guys were blow for blow and beat us up. And I think Brady Kick didn't throw it to our D lineman with that pick six. Things might have been different. But that was my other thing is I guess you answered my question. I didn't know if Brady Cook had one more year or how many years left, and who's going to replace Cody Schrader, man, because he was a beast last year.
Well, we got Marcus Carroll. I should have had my notes pulled up. I learned this the hard way last week, but we got Marcus Carroll, Georgia Southern running back that I think led college football in rushing touchdowns last year.
Wow.
And then Noel, App State running back that they're saying is very quick, very, very quick at putting his foot in the ground and making a cut and going. Then we've got a couple underclassmen that really haven't got to see the field yet, Jamal Roberts and Tavoris Jones, that were high recruits. And then we just got a 4-star out of Texas that's coming in, Kewan Lacey. So the running back room is loaded as far as talent and potential. Now getting on the field and putting that potential to actual results on game day can not always be what you think it might be, but I'm not too worried about replacing Cody Schrader. As great as he is, everything, the way he carries himself on the field, off the field, the way he represents the university, love that guy. But, 2 out of the last 3 years, Missouri's had the leading rushing running back for the SEC. It was Tyler Beatty 3 seasons ago and Cody Schrader this year. So I think with Eli Drinkwitz and the style of running game that he calls, I think we'll be all right. And it might be a committee this year. I don't really know. It's just like a receiver room. It's so loaded. Man, I don't know how some of these guys are even going to get to see the field. And, I feel like they're very deserving of it. So that we're getting into the problem with the depth on the roster that we're not used to. And it's probably something you're more accustomed to with being a Georgia fan. Like you've got 4 stars, 5 stars that never see the field that year. We're not used to that at Missouri. We're used to them coming in and getting to play, as a true freshman right away. And so learning and understanding that from the fan aspect of it has been a little bit different for us. But I mean, with the results that we got last year, you have to trust in the coaching staff and the direction that we're headed.
So what do you feel like is the biggest weakness, whether it be a specific position group or maybe a player that you feel like is not quite where he needs to be yet? What do you feel like is the biggest weakness on this Missouri team after spring practice?
I don't necessarily look at anything as a weakness just yet. There's more question marks. And the biggest one for me is up front on both sides of the ball. We're returning 3 of our offensive linemen, but it's the right side. Brady Cook's a right-handed quarterback, so we're having to replace his blind side. And then on D-line, having to replace a guy like Darius Robinson. That's hard. Them type guys aren't just made every year. So it's just waiting and anticipating who's going to step in and fill them roles. As we've learned in our 10 years of SEC play, if you don't have the guys up front, it don't matter how good your skill position or your secondary is. If you don't have the guys up front stopping a run and putting pressure on a quarterback on defense, or if you don't have a line that can hold up in run blocking and pass blocking and offense, it don't really matter how good everybody else is. That's the key to it. So those are my biggest question marks going into the season.
Yeah. So, Landon, we'll move on to you. A little bit of a spring practice update from you. And I'm very intrigued about Mississippi State this year with the hire of Jeff Lebby. How do you feel about the hire so far just after spring practice?
Well, thus far, it seems like there's some excitement with the offensive players he got in the portal to kind of have an immediate impact. We know Jeff Lebby, offensive coordinator for Oklahoma, helped with a great offense.
Nope.
I think we might have lost Landon.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
If that's any indication on how Jeff Lebby's going to do, we might be in trouble, man. All right. But yeah, Mississippi State brings in Jeff Lebby. I would say immediately he brings some excitement for some offensive players to have an immediate impact. We know Jeff Lebby was at Oklahoma last year, a top 5 offense in the nation, but there's that caveat of being against a Big 12 defense. And this is a whole new ball game. So I think Bulldog fans are very curious about how they'll do. Mississippi State's been known for having a pretty stout defense and putting some players into the NFL with Chris Jones and Jeffrey Simmons and Willie Gay and others. But offensively, Mississippi State's really struggled. Even having Dan Mullen, that's kind of been the height of the offense, but even at that point still struggled against premier teams. So Jeff Lebby has already brought in a slew of good talent. Just 3 days ago, transfer running back Rashad Amos, who's listed as the number 2 running back in the portal, committed to Mississippi State. Pro Football Focus had Amos as a top 20 running back last season. Mississippi State fans ultimately are wanting to see some excitement, and that's what this offense at least looks on the outside like it can bring. Blake Shapen, coming over as a transfer from Baylor, has had a good career, but really just been limited by injury. When Shapen's healthy, you look out. He started 23 games at Baylor over 3 seasons, and in the 3 seasons, he threw for 5,500 yards, 36 touchdowns, and completed almost 64% of his passes. But that's if he can stay healthy. And that's not really a promise at this point in his career. Wide receiver has been something that Mississippi State has been probably the weakest unit of their whole team throughout the history of Mississippi State. But Jeff Lebby's offense demands several dynamic receivers to be ready to score at a moment's notice. So they brought in talented receivers. Kelly A. from UTEP was over 1,000-yard receiver last season. Kevin Coleman was the SWAC freshman of the year, playing for Deion Sanders at Jackson State at wide receiver. So there is some excitement in terms of the offensive side of the ball. We'll find out even just a little bit of what that looks like this Saturday at 1:00 Central.
Yeah, I think it'll be exciting being able to see that. I do feel like that it's good for Mississippi State to get a guy that is specifically geared towards one side of the ball or the other, because I felt like just in my personal opinion, guy last year, forget his name off the top of my head.
Zach Arnett.
Zach Arnett. For some reason, I was thinking Clark Lee, and I was like, no, that's Vanderbilt. But Zach Arnett, he was more of like a CEO type, in my opinion. I mean, he knew defense. He was defensive coordinator under Mike Leach, but I felt like he didn't have a good plan for either side. But that's just me on the outside looking in, and having a guy that in Jeff Lebby this year that knows offense and is I guess you would say a guru in that sense. As long as he can bring in a defensive guy that knows what he's doing, then I think Mississippi State can have some success this year. But Skeeter, what are some of your thoughts or questions that you have for Landon on Mississippi State?
Well, I mean, the biggest one to me would be, what have y'all done to replace Will Rogers? I know last year's expectations didn't live up to what, he was projected toward the top half of SEC quarterbacks. And at the end of the year, looking at the numbers, it just wasn't there. And I'm sure a lot of that was Coach Arnett and the system of the coordinators that he put in just didn't leave Will Rogers, set him up for success. So losing a guy like that and with that much that many games behind him and all that, what's it looking like for y'all to replace quarterbacks? I mean, that's the most vital position on the field.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah, I think, if Blake Shapen can stay healthy, they can be kind of stay in some games offensively. Shapen's played in a similar type of offense. Now, behind him is going to be a true freshman, Michael Van Buren. He's the 57th overall prospect from this past season. He decommitted from Oregon, committed to Mississippi State. I believe that is because he saw that he might have an opportunity to play this season at Mississippi State, as opposed to having to wait out Dylan Gabriel at Oregon and the rest of their quarterbacks. He's remarkably talented. He's a guy that has always been fond of Jeff Lebby, played really well in the Under Armour All-American game. And so he's a guy that has got a little more twitch, a little bit faster, can scramble if need be. So that's something to look out for, because, as I mentioned, Shapen does have some good numbers when he's been able to stay healthy and stay in the game. But he's not been able to do that so far at a consistent basis. So Michael Van Buren might be a guy we see taking snaps at some point in the season.
All right, Trey, what about you? Any thoughts or questions for Landon?
Yeah, that would have been my really big question is, who's going to replace Will Rogers at quarterback. How about kind of saw where your negatives were? What are maybe some things you're excited about, or maybe even you're excited about seeing on Saturday for the spring game, or any certain players?
Yeah, well, Jeff Lebby has kind of had a theme of wanting to score from far away. And I was there the night he was introduced in Starkville, in a really remarkable atmosphere outside, had the big lights. It was something that at least us in Starkville have never seen. He brings excitement. And so I think on Saturday, we're going to see a little bit of that exciting offense of throwing it deep, of spreading everybody out and going very fast. And that's an offense we have not seen from Mississippi State. Even Mike Leach at his best in the air raid, while you're throwing it down the field, or throwing it in general, you're not really throwing it deep down the field. You're throwing very short intermediate passes and hoping that the lanes open up for you to go further. Saturday, I think Mississippi State fans, what they're wanting the most is to see there's going to be some excitement in this season. They're not expecting Jeff Lebby to come in and immediately contend in an already loaded SEC that's now adding Texas and Oklahoma. They want some excitement, and that will bring fans in, and hopefully will have a long-term effect on recruiting.
Yeah, so as far as Saturday goes, y'all are playing an actual game, right? It's not going to be a bunch of skills competitions and stuff,
Thus far, it is a normal spring game, but who knows, man? They might get excited and want a hot dog eating contest or something silly like that.
Yeah.
You never know.
But yeah, just from an outsider's perspective, I mean, it seems like exciting times down there at Mississippi State with Jeff Lebby coming in. So I'm looking forward to this season with Mississippi State. So Trey, we'll move over to you. Go ahead.
Well, I do have one more question for Landon. It was kind of hit me there while Trey was talking to him. With Arnett not working out, and just the learning curve seemed to be too steep for him, first year head coach. Do you feel comfortable with them going out and getting another first-year head coach just from the different side of the ball, or was there another name out there that maybe you're hoping to see him go after, or you're happy with what they got?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Well, I think Zach Arnett was put in almost an unwinnable situation to at least start. Mike Leach dies, 12 less than 12 days later. That they're having to scramble and to kind of keep the class together, and Zach Arnett gets thrown in that situation, and obviously does not succeed. It kind of overwhelms him. I would say if Mississippi State is going to have a first year head coach, let it be on the offensive side of the ball. Dan Mullen was able to bring some excitement to Starkville. There was an offense that was just inept for 7 years, and all of a sudden, kind of in a similar sense now, there was kind of a buzz around the program offensively. So I think you'd err on the side of having an offensive guy, because if you lose how Mississippi State lost last season, LSU comes in and Heisman winner Jaden Daniels just tears them up all over the field, and the offense can't move the ball. It feels different losing that way than losing 44-38. You want, if you're going to lose, which sounds like a Mississippi State way to go. If we're going to lose, we should do it this way. But if you are going to lose, let it be with some fight and not just rolling over and playing dead. And so I think fans are excited about that. Hopefully to get that out of Jeff Levy.
Yeah, and as a Tennessee fan, that a different situation, but I guess I can kind of pull some similarities out of it. We went from Jeremy Pruitt, that was defensive-minded guy. We're losing games where we only scored 17 points. I think we only scored over 24 points like 3 times in the Jeremy Pruitt tenure. And now we got Josh Heupel, and his first season went 7-6 on the year. But hey, you're losing but scoring points. So I mean, it's a different way to lose that you can, I guess, accept better than if you're just not scoring anything. So I totally get what you mean by that. But Trey, we'll go ahead and move on to you now. Of course, expectations are sky high in Georgia. I mean, Kirby Smart has taken that program, and I won't say just turned it around, because Georgia has always been a good program under Mark Richt. He couldn't get over that hump there, but then Kirby Smart, he took over, and it took him a few years, but he's now got Georgia at the pinnacle of college football. So what are some of your thoughts from spring practice so far?
Yeah, first off, Carson, I'll go with, the negatives and positives. So Carson Beck, to me, came out kind of flat, struggled in the first half. I had some friends that I didn't go to the game, but I attended the game, that were like, you need to be watching film and practicing and driving your Lambo and going around spending all your money. And because he posted all this stuff, he just looked flat, looked a little better in the second half. I know it's a spring game, but hopefully he improves. But Dominic Lovett, transfer, looked great. Sorry there, Skeeter. He 7 receptions, 104 and a touchdown. Also, Ra Thomas. Sorry, Landon. So I know we took some of your guys. They look great. Colby Young, who's a transfer from Miami, he looked really good. He looked kind of like Lawrence Cager-esque from back in 2019 for Georgia. Trevor Etienne from Florida. So I feel like we're getting the SEC transfer portal guys. They look really good. Defense, to me, stepped up and did a lot better. I thought if I had to be really nitpicky, the defense might take a little bit of a step back. So all in all, they look pretty good. It was a 2020 tie, so it's tradition there. The joke was the winning teams get steak, the losing team gets beanie weenies. And the joke was, all right, who's getting steak and beanie weenies? It's 2020 tie. They tried a field goal at the very end. But, yeah, all in all, I think it was great. And also another big news today, we got 4-star QB Ryan Montgomery out of Ohio, so that was a big pickup today. I think we're out of the Juju Lewis sweepstakes now. He'll probably end up – I think he's going to visit Alabama and Auburn, and then he's a USC commit. So that was big news today, recruiting-wise. But, yeah, all in all, yeah, I feel pretty good about the spring practice game.
Yeah, so going back to last year for just a minute, you can give me your perspective on it, but for me, I said on numerous different occasions that the offense looked just as good as it did the year before with Carson Beck at the helm. You had plenty of weapons out there, But the defense at times kind of looked a little bit lackluster. There was a lot more missed tackles at that first level than what we're used to seeing Georgia have. Now, the secondary was still unbelievable, but it seemed like that front seven kind of took a step back from that 2022 team that was just unbelievable. So what are your thoughts on that right there? Am I kind of hitting the nail on the head a little bit there?
Yeah, you were. So in 2021 and 2022, you had Jalen Carter, obviously top 10 pick, the Eagles. You had Jordan Davis, who went to Philadelphia Eagles. We had a lot of like good guys, but they weren't great or elite. And I think that kind of hurt on some of the pressure and the havoc plays. And then like John Dumas Johnson, who ended up transferring to Kentucky, he was a little banged up, and he didn't tackle that well this year. I don't know if it was kind of the injuries, and we had to put in some young guys. And then in the Alabama game, we were banged up with Ladd and Brock, not making excuses. I mean, I felt like we definitely should have been in the playoffs. That's a whole other issue with that whole thing. We just came out flat, played bad. I mean, gave it to Alabama. They beat us on offense and defensive side of the ball and on the line of scrimmage. So they were better team. But I felt like, we weren't that great elite defense. Still statistically, we were good. But on offensive side of the ball, we were right there. I think we ended up top 5 in total offense. Carson Beck, I think we were like a point difference than the Todd Monken era, who ended up going to Baltimore. So, yeah, the offense was there. But Kirby always has great defense. But still a great year. I mean, it's sad to say we're disappointed in an Orange Bowl win and going 13-1. But that's kind of where the bar is these days in Athens.
Well, I mean, Tennessee fan here saying this, I said all year long, Georgia's the best team in the nation. I called it first week of the season. I said they're going to go back to back to back, and then just unfortunate circumstances happened in the SEC championship game. Alabama ended up besting you guys there, and then, whether it's conspiracy, whatever, you get left out of the playoffs. But, any other year, Georgia probably makes the playoffs, even losing the SEC title game like that. But, strange things happened this year or this past season for that not to work out. But Skeeter, you got anything for Trey?
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing a lot of NFL draft, just mock drafts and stuff like that, looking into it. And I made a hot take a couple weeks ago on one of our episodes and said the potential is there for Brady Cook to get himself drafted higher than Luther Burden this upcoming year. With all the weapons around him, he could have a really big year, and got a lot of negative pushback on that hot take. So, in all that, it led me into looking at what the scouts are saying for the 25 class, and Shadur Sanders and why did my mind just go blank? Carson Beck are 1-2 in most of them. What skills, they're for a lot of it. A lot of people say Carson Beck was very dependent on Brock Bowers, but y'all didn't have Brock Bowers when we played y'all last year. And Carson Beck stepped up and made very key throws in the game against us without his biggest weapons. So what traits do you want to see him take a step forward in from what he gave y'all last year and see that improvement in this year?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, first off, I want to see him be a leader. So it's his second year coming in where he's the guy. He's the number one guy taking all the snaps. I'm going to go back to Stetson Bennett. He always was battling just to be, a starter. He finally got the last 2 years. He was the number one guy. He took all the reps. So I think another year in the system, another year under Mike Bobo, and him being a leader. And I think he's coming in with this confidence because he knows he's the man again this year. Hope he's focusing on the right things these days, not cars and gifts and girls or whatever. So I hope he's focused there. But back to your question, I want to see him be a leader and him having the confidence. And they do have some good skill players around them, and the O-line is going to be good. But yeah, I do kind of want to see him maybe put a game on his back and have to go down the field and get a win. We'll probably go over the schedule because we got a brutal schedule. But I want to see him do some come from behind and put the team on his back type. And you can't live off Ladin Conkey and Brock Bowers, like you said, because those guys don't grow on trees every day. So that's kind of.
But I was looking right here, and who is the backup tight end that you have that came in after Brock Bowers got hurt last year? I can't think what his name is.
We got Oscar Delp.
Yes, that's who I'm thinking of. I mean, he might not have quite the skill set as Brock Bowers does, but he's still probably one of the best tight ends, if not the best tight end in the SEC going in. Just, I mean, his size and his ability. So, I mean, just to be able to replace Brock Bowers with a guy like that, it's still going to be huge for Georgia this year.
Yeah, we have one of the deepest tight end room. Todd Hartley has recruited his butt off. We also got another 4-star, Lawson Lucky, who looked really good in the spring. He had a tightrope injury, kind of was banged up. And then we've had some other commitments come in. So we're very deep there. But, yeah, I completely agree. Oscar Delp, can't have another Brock Bowers, but he might be one of those, 4 catches, 50 yards and touchdown type guy, which would be great in the red zone. So, yeah, we're very fortunate there.
Yeah. So, Landon, what do you have for Trey on Georgia?
Oh, you're muted, Landon.
Yeah, I think you're muted.
No, sir. Trey, how good are you at reading lips?
Pretty good. Hey, we could why don't we swing it over to Michael? I know you've been teeing this up. Well, how the Vols look this year, and how'd Nico look? I read into it because very interested. Because of course we got to play you guys. So maybe give us a review of the Tennessee game.
Yeah. So Nico did exactly what he needed to this spring. He worked on a few things that he really needed to. One thing that I like about him is that he's very good at the off-scripted plays, and he just needs to fine-tune some of the plays where everything goes right. But when things break down, that's when I feel like he's at his best. And that's something that you can't coach, which is a very exciting thing about Nico. But if you get the plays that are on script to kind of fine tune some of those skills, then you've got yourself a heck of a quarterback. But the thing that stands out for me is the wide receiver room this year. Last year we had a bunch of guys that just could not get separation. We had Brew McCoy go down with a brutal injury against South Carolina, and that kind of took the wind out of the sails of Tennessee. We still had Squirrel White in the slot, but teams start keying on him, and you don't have other guys that can separate, and you're having to focus everything on the running game, really. So we got a deep wide receiver room this year, brought in 5-star wide receiver Mike Matthews, who really impressed in the spring game, brought in some transfers, namely Chris Brazel from Tulane. He really looks good in the spring game, probably the best overall wide receiver in the spring game. The big thing that I'm excited about, though, is the defense. Completely rebuilt the secondary, got a lot of athletes there. But the defensive line, the defensive front could be one of the best fronts in the SEC this year. You got James Pierce, the leading edge rusher, coming back this year. You've got 5-star Jordan Ross that came in that looks really good in the spring game, and just got a lot of depth at the defensive line position. So a lot of excitement. But I do agree with you, Skeeter. You only take so much from that spring game, because if we're taking everything from the spring game, shoot, Gaston Moore, walk-on 6th-year senior, is going to be our starting quarterback next year. He was really good. Had like 3 passing touchdowns, 200 yards passing. So yeah, he's starting next year. He's winning the Heisman. But yeah, it's exciting times on Knoxville. Josh Heupel has brought a different brand than Tennessee has ever seen. So really looking forward to this season.
Is Landon? I see his video still down, or his box is still there, but now it's showing he's muted and no video. So while he's working on that, I guess what I want to ask you on Tennessee, what's the vibe around the program? I feel Tennessee's one of those programs that the fan base every year feels like they should be in contention for SEC championship and national contender, conversation. So with the playoffs expanding like they have, is that the expectations? Is that where anything below that is going to be disappointing to you, or where you're at on that?
So I do believe that that Tennessee should definitely be in contention for the playoffs. I'm not gonna say that they should be, playing for the SEC title just because. I mean, you got teams like Georgia. I mean, Texas is that's who I would say right now is going to be the two teams in the SEC title game as we're sitting today. So I mean, you got teams like that they'll probably compete for the SEC championship. But if you're sitting third or fourth, then I don't see any reason why you don't make that 12-team playoff. So I think that Tennessee has got the roster and the capability to do that. And a lot of Vols fans are going to be disappointed if that does not happen this year. I mean, you're looking at a lot of people saying 9-3 this year. I've said 9-3. I've also said 10-2. I don't. Looking at the schedule, I don't think that they should be worse than that. So, I mean, expectations should be making the 12-team playoff this year.
Okay. Landon, are you? Nope. He was there and he's gone now. Okay.
I'm going to try to message him and see if we can get him back in.
This is kind of a general SEC question for y'all. With us no longer being CBS network, what do you feel? Do you feel the brand of SEC football is going to grow even bigger, bringing in Texas and OU and, falling completely under the ESPN ABC moniker? Or what are your expectations? Is it business as usual? SEC football is the brand, and then whatever network we get.
Yeah, Trey, I'll let you take it first.
Yeah, first off, I'm, probably showing my age, but I'm a little more, traditional. But anyway, I'm going to miss the CBS done. I'm going to miss all that. And I think the whole Disney, ESPN, ABC, and I kind of grieved a while back with the whole, Texas and Oklahoma. I just think it's probably coming. It's going to be mega conferences. It's going to be NFL Junior. So I'm just enjoying as it is.
We got it.
But that's why it is. But back to that, I'm just going to miss the announcers. I know Gary and Brad. Maybe not everybody was a Gary fan, but man, when you hear like 3:30 CBS, it was prime time, and they get that occasional once a year, 8 p.m. I'm going to miss the CBS answer it, but it is what it is on the ESPN and the Disney and all that. And then I keep warning my mom, traditional, got cable is coming. She's a diehard Georgia fan. Like, you're going to have to get the streamings, Mom, get the internet. Kind of like she couldn't watch the spring game this past week. She's going to have to watch the rerun when it comes on 22nd or whatever. So it kind of is what it is, to answer your question.
Yeah. So before I give my answer, Landon, we got you back now.
Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you now. So
I tell you what, I joked and said that if there was any implication on how the season is going to go for Mississippi State, and so at this point with all these difficulties, bet the under on the win total. It's real rough right now. I had a quick question for Trey.
Okay.
Thinking about Georgia always has had such a power run game with just an onslaught of talented running backs. In this season, if I'm not mistaken, Edwards and Milton are now both gone. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, yeah. So in doing that, that's 1,800 yards and 27 touchdowns to replace. Who's a guy you're looking to kind of take the stance, or I guess maybe multiple guys to be the running back for the season?
Yep, and actually yesterday I lost a guy in the portal, Andrew Paul, who he was probably third or fourth string, but he had a good spring game, 44 yards on 4 carries and a touchdown. But we got Trevor Etienne, transfer from Florida. They're very salty about that, so that's always a good thing. He's probably going to be the number one. shifty, quick, can catch the ball out the backfield. Also, Branson Robinson, who had a bad knee injury, but they're saying he's going to be ready. He's doing some things already. He was great 2 years ago when he played in limited play. And we got 3 incoming 4- and 5-star running backs. They're going to be there as well. So we're young, but Trevor Etienne is going to be definitely the man, and it's going to be by committee after that. But they throw it a lot more with Mike Bobo. And I'll say this, last year compared to the other years might have been one of the, I hate to say, weakest in Milton and Dejon Edwards. I mean, Milton was always great, but he's always banged up, and Edwards is kind of shifty, but he wasn't like take it to the house. And I think we've got Trevor Etienne is like maybe DeAndre Swift-esque to answer your question. So I think we're going to be good there. We're going to throw it a lot this year.
And, all jokes by the way here, Trey, but ETN, he definitely fit that. He fits that Georgia mantra now after the whole speeding incident. So glad that he fits in well there. But no, all jokes on that. Yeah, Skeeter, to answer your question earlier about the ESPN and ABC now for the SEC. I'm like Trey. I've grown up my whole life. It was SEC on CBS. So I hate to see that go, but I'm excited to see the future of the SEC on ABC and ESPN. One thing that's going to be interesting is, prime time, as Trey mentioned, was always at the 3:30 kickoff on CBS. Now you're looking at prime time. It's the night game now on ESPN. So I think that the home team is definitely going to have a little bit more advantage, because you look at teams like, Tennessee, Missouri, Mississippi State, Georgia, all of us on here, but really just every team. When it's a night game at their home stadium, it's a different atmosphere. You look, as a Tennessee fan, you look at the Alabama game back in 2022. It was a 2:30 kickoff, but by the time the game ended, it's night there. You got the orange fireworks going off after the field goal. It's just a totally different atmosphere at night. So it's going to be interesting to see how the environment plays into that with the primetime games being at night. But I just feel like that the SEC is the biggest brand out there, and that includes the Big Ten. And no matter where they go, it's going to be big.
I think one thing I've been thinking about is there'll be more marketing as far as across the Disney networks. CBS just kind of, hey, we do NFL on Sunday and SEC on Saturday, and they just kind of, our product is what it is. I don't feel that CBS was really with the times as far as, hey, come in this Saturday at this time, we've got this game, that game, whatever. I think Monday Night Football, when everybody's tuning in to watch, the Saints play the Cowboys or whatever, I don't even know what the schedule is this year, but when everybody's tuning in to watch Monday Night Football, I think ESPN is going to do a good job of promoting the SEC games coming up that weekend. ESPN also has the broadcasting rights for the playoffs. I don't think that can be anything that hurts the SEC. It's just going to help I think it's going to help the exposure even more. Programs like Georgia, like Tennessee, Alabama, LSU, y'all aren't hurting for exposure. It's, the bottom half of the league that has been asking for more of it. And I feel this is opening the opportunity for a lot of that. With Mizzou coming off, the double-digit wins and all the potential there, I think we're naturally going to get a little bit more exposure this year. Last year we kind of caught people off guard. This year it's not going to be that way. But, I think it's going to build the conference up as a whole. Now, Vanderbilt might be a little bit more attractive to a high school recruit that has to pick between a Big 12 school and Vanderbilt, because they see Vanderbilt play every weekend on, ESPN or SEC network. And so I just think the exposure is going to help the conference. Maybe not necessarily this year, but in the years to come, it's going to pay off.
Yeah, and to your point there about and not throwing a shot here at you, Landon, but the bottom half of the conference, they're getting more exposure. That opens up a team like Mississippi State this year that has a new head coach in Jeff Lebby that's going to bring a exciting brand of offense to the game. That's going to make them more attractive to the TV spots. Landon, what are your thoughts on SEC moving to ABC, ESPN, and some of the attractiveness of the offense?
Yeah, well, it's kind of fun to think about. The SEC is already so massive and has been so dominant for the past two decades and even longer. And so to think about the SEC somehow growing their exposure even more is almost hard to really consider. If you really think about somehow it growing. But yeah, Skeeter's exactly right. It can only do great things for the SEC and help some of those bottom teams. And it's interesting you bring up Vanderbilt. I was thinking the other day that the transfer portal has been so beneficial for so many teams, but for some of the lower tier teams, it can really hurt. Vanderbilt's best player this season was a wide receiver for the life of me. But Trey, what was his name? Wide receiver that transferred to Georgia.
Yeah, Landon Humphreys.
That guy. Yeah. Trust a guy named Landon. That guy's going to lead you a long way. No, but really, that guy was the best player on Vanderbilt's team, and he transfers, to another team to kind of go up. And in years past, you think, man, there is just no escape for Vanderbilt. And now with this exposure growing, it can only help them. The real question is, will they be able, and other teams like Mississippi State, be able to capitalize on that exposure? That's kind of the lingering question.
Well, and an interesting thing that I don't know if y'all know, I found this out from listening to some sports radio. So Vanderbilt cannot bring in transfer portal players like a lot of other schools. Teams like Vanderbilt, Wake Forest, Stanford, and there's others, those private schools there, they cannot bring in those transfer portal players like other teams can because of their academic standards, and there's some other things that go into that. But basically, the only way that they can bring in some high-level transfer players, they have to be a grad transfer. So that also puts them behind the eight ball of teams like we have that can bring in transfer portal players at any given time. But let's go ahead and let's do some predictions, and we'll start with Missouri. Let me pull
undefeated. You don't have to put it up. Undefeated.
There you go. Yeah. I like it.
There we go. So let me pull it up real quick.
Hey, everybody's undefeated in the spring, as they say.
That's it.
Yeah. No, that's the wrong page. I've got like two different screens here. Here we go. So this season, Skeeter, I'll start with you. You're the Missouri guy. What do you think on this schedule?
I think it is a good thing we have got away from Jim Sturk as our athletic director that we had 5 years ago when he was doing these advanced schedules. You look at this. Excuse me. But you look at this and like an SEC school at UMass, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? I'm so glad that we got rid, and he left on his own accord. And right now we're without an AD. But, man, you just see these schedules and you think the old mindset that we used to have of doing these schedules, and now you look at it and it's laughable. But as far as SEC draw, you've got it on the screen right there. That 3 weeks, Auburn at Alabama and OU. That's our season. I mean, that right there is our season. I think we know a little bit the week before UMass when we go at College Station. We'll kind of have an idea there. But nothing really sticks out as far as like absolutely scared. Alabama was until Nick Saban retired. Now that's a great mystery to everybody. You know, what is DeBoer going to do with the Crimson Tide? So overall, I would say reasonable expectations. 11-1. Floor anything below 9-3 is not a good year in my opinion with the schedule that we've been given.
Yeah, Trey, what are your thoughts on Missouri's schedule?
Yeah, I just know you guys are really good at home. I think having Brady Cook back and then Luther Burton, arguably one of the or top wide receiver in the nation. Not sure about your defense. You might have a lot returning, but if you had to put any like games you're kind of worried about on there, any road games, I don't know. I need to put my glasses on. I want to show my age, but Texas A&M, that could be tough. I know they got a new coach. Of course, Alabama, like you said. Is there any maybe ones kind of on the fence, kind of tweener games?
Well, I mean, it's SEC, so you don't really take any week for granted as far as conference play.
That out South Carolina could be tough later. A little chilly there. They get
that's
night game, sandstorm.
That's one we always seem to play tight with, regardless of whose season's doing what. South Carolina always seems to be a close game. Last year really wasn't, if I'm going off my memory correct. Mississippi State with them freaking loud, annoying cowbells. You know, like it can be intimidating at times. Stark Vegas, whatever they want to call it down there. So, you know, I've kind of got the mindset of the schedule is what it is. Go play it. Go win your ball games. Don't make excuses. You know, if I had to go through week by week, this doesn't show the buys. It's one thing we have to keep in mind is everybody has double buys now. And so where you're catching teams coming off buys or sandwiched between maybe big rivalry games, all that goes into it because you can catch a team on a down week or you can catch them on an up week. And so it's just hard to look at it right here and really say, yeah, this one scares me. But, you know, Auburn, like, I don't look at Auburn as we should just walk over them. You know, they've got the potential to do good. Every school in the SEC besides maybe Vanderbilt and Arkansas, but Arkansas's turned into a rivalry for us, even though their fans don't acknowledge that. So any rivalry game, you don't really take for granted. I imagine you don't just assume you're going to Jacksonville every year at the largest outdoor cocktail party and think we're walking away with a win. That's what you hope for, but you know how the rivalries go.
Right.
Yeah. Skeeter, it seems like, even just kind of looking at the schedule, you know, 7-0 is really not out of the realm of possibility. I mean, of course, going on the road at Kyle Field is not an easy task. I mean, that can be a very loud place as well. In Auburn, you never know, but that's a homecoming game. I would say, I mean, there's a great possibility of Missouri walking out after October 19th, 7-0, and in a really good place. That could be a college game day going into to face the Crimson Tide. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a homer. I predicted 11-1 last year going into the season. I saw our one loss as Georgia, and really we probably should have beat LSU, but you know, that's for another podcast another day or old podcast we've already talked about. But I mean, really, if I wore my emotions on my sleeve, I could say we win all these games. But I know realistically, it is so hard to do what Georgia has established as their standard, you know, to where if the potential to get beat is there, but you really kind of expect them to win every ball game of the regular season, you know, and that's kind of where my mind has got to with this team, just with what we're bringing back and how the schedule fits. But I mean, 7-0 is absolutely a real possibility for me.
Yep, I agree there. I look at this schedule here, and I think that, y'all do start 7-0, that Texas A&M game there does intrigue me because you've got new head coach Mike Elko. It is in College Station. But I think a good thing for Missouri here is you're getting them within the first 5 weeks of the season. I guess it'd be 6 because you got your bye week between or in between the Vanderbilt and the Texas A&M game. But that's also an advantage for you guys having that bye game before, or the bye week before that A&M game. So I do think that you come out 7-0. That trip to Tuscaloosa, that's going to be a big one there. Just sitting here today, I think y'all keep it close, but I am going to pick Alabama to win that one. I think your swing game this year is this Oklahoma game because you're coming off of a game in Tuscaloosa against Alabama. It's going to be tough, and then you welcome in Oklahoma after that. I can see that maybe being a letdown game, but I'm also going to go 11-1 for Missouri this year. It's favorable for Missouri based on this schedule.
And 11-1 now, you know, we don't have to just chase Georgia. It's top 2 teams in conference. I think tiebreakers is going to leave. We're going to have to learn these tiebreakers, and we'll all do our homework as podcasters going into the season of, hey, this is what this tiebreaker is and this and this. But then if it gets into the situation at the end of the year, we'll be like, what's this tie? Let's see what this tiebreaker is. If we're on the good side of it, we're going to love it. If we're on the bad side of it, we're going to hate it. So that's different how we're watching standings now throughout the season across the conference. And, you know, 11-1, I think absolutely should. We would be looking at Atlanta then, if that's the case.
Yeah, I agree with you. So we'll move right along. Trey, we're going to get Georgia's schedule up here next. What are your thoughts on Georgia's schedule for this season?
First off, brutal. No favors at all, being honest. You're open with Clemson. I know Clemson's taking a step back, but that's going to be tough. They're ranked, I believe, probably top 25. You got early on the road, 3rd game against Kentucky. Got a bye week, which will really help, and then you're at Alabama. I know it's no Nick Saban, but still, I think that's going to be it's a night game, so it's going to be already listed 7:30. Then you got to go at Texas. That's going to be tough. And you got Ole Miss, and then Tennessee is going to be no joke. So it's going to be no favors. I guess if I was optimistic, I'm hoping 11-1. Worst case, I hope it's 10-2. And I was going to ask you guys that. Here's what I was thinking on this. I was like, first off, Skeeter in Missouri. So this is a marathon this year, not a sprint. So what I'm thinking, hey, 10-2, we'll give you that SEC championship game. Let us rest our legs. Get possibly kind of like what you guys, top 6, top 7, whatever the matchup is. I hope it's not at Ohio State or at Michigan in December and it's snowing and 20 degrees. So I would take 10-2, sit out that SEC championship game, even though I know Kirby loves that, and give us a 6th or 7th seed with our brutal schedule. And we kind of see where the matchups are, because I'm all about like saving your legs. It's going to be, you gotta really lean on your endurance this year. So I'm looking at, answer your question, 11-1, 10-2, but very, very tough schedule, but some great primetime matchups.
Hey, Trey, is there a specific game in looking at this that makes you more nervous than others? I know you said 11-1, 10-2. You got some tough games on the road.
I do. Yeah, definitely. I want to try to split, to be honest, the at Alabama or at Texas. If you say, hey, we get one of those, and then Ole Miss is going to be tough, but I just feel like Kirby's kind of had Lane beat him up pretty good. I know it's at Ole Miss. He's kind of had his number. He knows how to. But, yeah, if I can split the Texas and Alabama, but if we lose those two and then we're a little banged up a little bit, or let's say Carson Beck gets hurt, I mean, we could be definitely looking at a tough year. So those road games are brutal. If we can get 2 out of 3, I'll be happy with it. And then at Kentucky with Brock Vandagriff, former Dog, that's not going to be easy either. I mean, I'm looking at FB schedules. I mean, you got Clemson ranked, Kentucky ranked, Alabama ranked 3, 4, Ole Miss, 6. I mean, you're looking at 6 out of 12 teams ranked. I mean, no favors. So
Yeah, kind of makes up for the cupcake schedule that you guys had last year, which wasn't y'all's fault. You know, you had Oklahoma scheduled, but the SEC said that because of Oklahoma and Texas coming in, you know, Tennessee had the same thing happen, had to reschedule because we also had Oklahoma on the schedule. But Landon, I want to hear your thoughts on Georgia's schedule this year. What do you think the expectations should be?
Yeah, well, I think Trey nailed it. I mean, obviously, Georgia's had a very consistent method of winning and doing well towards the end of the year. And this year, there's a great opportunity. You know, we look at the schedule and go, man, Texas and Oklahoma. But we do have to remember this is their first year in the SEC on a week in, week out basis. So of course they're excellent programs, but they have not done this the way that Georgia has done it over the past their history in the SEC. So I think just looking at it in my head, 10-2 just makes the most sense. Maybe dropping one of those games on the road, but Kirby is really shown that he's the standard. And especially with Nick Saban now gone, and so I certainly see it being very possible being 10-2 towards the end of the year, and kind of securing up a playoff spot. And if Georgia can get in the playoffs, then watch out because Kirby has experience being there before.
Yeah, Skeeter, what are your thoughts?
Well, I just looked because I thought that Texas game would be pretty close to the Red River rivalry, and it's the week after they play OU. So I think that's a big bonus for you guys because there's a lot of energy spent amongst them fan bases on that game leading up to that week. And then the week after, they're talking about whether it's a win or a loss. So I think that's going to be a big change for Texas to learn this year, and OU that, hey, you just got through your big opponent. Well, guess what? You got Georgia coming up this week. This isn't the Big 12 anymore. You don't get Kansas next week. So but as far as you saying, if you get the 6 or 7 seed, keep in mind the top 4 seeds have a bye. So seeds 5 through 9, I think, or 5 through 8 get home games. So if you get that 6-7, it's going to be in Athens there, your playoff game opening round. And then after that, I think it's at bowl sites, correct?
Yeah.
So if you get that 6-7 seed, I think you're all right. As far as the games themselves, Ole Miss after Florida, I think one probably has my antenna up this year. Ole Miss brought in a lot of talent.
They did.
Just because you go in the portal and get those guys doesn't mean it's going to equal wins. Look at Jimbo Fisher and what he's able to do with bringing in a lot of talent and what it correlated to on the field. But that's one that definitely has potential. It's just I think Kirby he's got a level of greatness about him that we're yet to really understand or appreciate. And going in and watching his press conferences and the behind the scenes videos that we're getting more and more access with technology now and social media platforms, I think he somehow has talked the team into thinking that they're the underdogs every week, or that this is the week that so and so has written them off. And so until Kirby Moore is gone or gives me reason to not think this, I think undefeated or one game hiccup in there somewhere is very realistic for Georgia. You're going to find out week 1 there against Clemson what you got, because I think they're returning their quarterback, correct?
That's right.
Yeah, so y'all are going to know pretty quick.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you, Skeeter. I mean, right now Georgia has got the best college football coach in the game, and I'm going to trust in that until somebody proves that I mean, they can best him. So I mean, I've got 11-1. I knew that Georgia had a brutal schedule this year. I didn't realize how brutal it was until I pulled this up and started looking at it. But
Yeah, it's bad.
I do think that the Alabama game falls in a good spot because you've got the bye week before that game, and also you're catching Alabama early in the season. I feel like that Georgia right now, you've got stability there, so you guys know what you're doing. Alabama might still be figuring some things out by this point, so I think it's a great spot to catch Alabama. I've got you guys going into Tuscaloosa and pulling out a win there. Auburn, Mississippi State, I've got his wins right now. That Texas game, that one has got my attention. Middle of the season, Texas has also got stability there. This is going to be a fantastic game. I do think sitting here today, I'm going to lean to the home team. This game is probably going to be under the lights, primetime game, which, as I mentioned earlier, is going to be a huge difference maker. So I am going to take Texas in this game sitting here today. But as far as the rest of the schedule, I see you guys going in, beating Florida in Jacksonville. You mentioned it. Kirby has got Lane Kiffin's number. I honestly see this being a 2-3 touchdown game at Ole Miss. Tennessee, I'd love to sit here today and say, hey, we're going to beat you guys in Athens, but it's not going to happen this year. Georgia's going to win that one. I do hope that us as a Tennessee fan, I hope that we keep it close, because that means that we're moving in the right direction. But obviously, you're gonna knock off UMass and you're gonna beat the JV team there. But yeah, I've got 11-1 this year, setting yourself up for either SEC championship game, but without a doubt, a playoff spot this year, going into things.
I can't believe that y'all are so scared to not be, true SEC teams and go play at UMass. I mean, really, you got to bring them to Athens?
Minutemen.
Yeah, I mean,
another quick little thing. Sorry, so another one about that Texas game is the big Formula One race. So I don't know if that was a part of it. And Georgia usually travels well, and I heard Georgia guys Georgia people can't even get any tickets or hotels. So that's going to be another negative. Like, we can't even get in there. I heard you got to book them a couple of hours out. So, because we usually travel well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Landon, I'm going to pull up the Mississippi State schedule this year. I want to get your thoughts on Mississippi State under first-year head coach Jeff Lebby.
Yeah, well, 2023 obviously was a disappointing year for Mississippi State for many reasons. One of them was Mississippi State, regardless of their struggles, actually had the third longest bowl streak. For 13 years, Mississippi State had made a bowl, and that ended this past year. So obviously getting back to a bowl, I think, is the biggest thing for Mississippi State, just to start back there to build something on for the next year. Currently, Mississippi State has the sixth toughest schedule in the nation. There are some tough games on the road, some tough back-to-backs, but of course that's the SEC. Even early in the season, going on the road at Arizona State, that's just tough going across the country anyway. Even though Arizona State did struggle this past season, they bring in Toledo, who won the MAC, but lost a lot of their talent. Probably will not be the same team. And then, as I mentioned, you have Florida coming to town. Then you have on the road at Texas, and then on the road at Georgia. Really difficult. And then, of course, the poor UMass Minutemen, man, they're having a tough one, but their athletic program is going to be paid off pretty well. Ultimately, I think for Mississippi State, I believe the current win-loss is 5.5 wins. And so I think it's going to be tough for them to get the over, honestly. This is a pretty tough schedule. Now, I do think because of the offense that Jeff Lebby is bringing in, there is potential for Mississippi State. If they can stay in some games, which is what they're hoping this offense brings, they can sneak up and beat an Arkansas, beat a Texas A&M, and those are winnable games pretty much in and out the past couple of years anyway. And so I would say, really the ceiling for Mississippi State, to me, Probably realistically looks at 7-5. I think that would be, as sad as that sounds, I think that's a pretty good ceiling to get back to a bowl game with this schedule in particular. But on the floor, I think 4-8 is also at play as well. Would be wonderful if they jumped up, and because their offense being quick, being fast, was able to sneak out some extra wins. But 7-5, I think, would be the ceiling for the first year under Jeff Levy.
Yeah, I think that's fair there. Trey, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think you guys can go bowling, make it to a bowl game, 6-6, 7-5. I think that'd be a great start with a new coach. It just looks like kind of got a brutal schedule there. I think it's great that you're coming to Athens there in October. So I think that at Tennessee is going to be tough too. Any certain games you circle, like maybe some kind of shift games or call them tweener games?
Yeah, I think winning. Mississippi State won on the road at Arizona. Because I don't know what our deal is with those schools in Arizona, but now we're going at Arizona State to start off the season. There is potential to be 3-0 going into play Florida, and Florida's on a little bit of shifting sand. We'll see how this season is under Billy Napier, but if you can somehow win that game and start off 4-0, the perspective from Mississippi State fan base is going to be a lot more locked in and interested throughout the rest of the season. If you drop one of those games early, it can wear on the team to lose that way early on. So I would say that Florida game is a very important linchpin. If you can somehow find a way to go 4-0, and then all of a sudden now you're going on the road at Texas, which is not a fun time at all, but you have some confidence going into the season, and then making a bowl looks a lot more possible if you start off with 3 or 4 wins at that point going into the Texas game. So yeah, I would say that Florida game is important, and it is in Starkville, so that's that could be helpful.
Yeah, Skeeter, what are your thoughts on Mississippi State's schedule this year?
Well, big thing, is that correct on the bottom down there where it says the Egg Bowl's on Saturday this year?
Yes, they have. They've gone back and forth on that. Yeah, it is being taken off of Thanksgiving for the first time in a long time.
Honestly, I hate that.
Yeah, I always look forward to that Thanksgiving night. So here the last couple of years, but if y'all get to 7-5, I think the view of the program outside of Starkville definitely goes up. I think that'd be a huge accomplishment with the new coach, and man, the schedule that is tough. You got the 4 weeks of red right there. UMass obviously not that big of a deal, but bookended by the orange. Both of them ugly in my opinion, but man, that stretch right there can be brutal. There's no breaks anymore, especially bringing in Texas. I know not that there really ever was, but just think, y'all. Really, we're probably moving to 9-game conference, so that means taking UMass out and throwing in Kentucky or LSU or somebody like that for you, and we're so used to these schedules and thinking, oh man, we got it hard this year, but we move to these 9-game conferences or 9-game conference schedules, and it's going to be every year we're going to be like, dang, can we go back to the 8-game conference schedules because this sucks, But I think 7-5 in there would be a huge year for your program and a big building block.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it's a real possibility and should be the goal to start off the season 3-0. Of course, that Arizona State will be that'll be a big toss up, just going out there on the road. But I think that Mississippi State can pull that off. You mentioned Atlanta. I think the Florida game is going to be huge. That's going to be your first swing game. I've got 2 swing games for Mississippi State this year. You've got the Florida game here. You mentioned that they're kind of on shifting sands right now. You get that game at home, though. So I do give Mississippi State a win in that one, starting off 4-0. Brutal 2-game stretch there going against Texas and Georgia on the road. This, in my opinion, is the big swing game. This Texas A&M game at home in Starkville, we don't exactly know what Texas A&M is going to look like under first-year head coach Mike Elko. He could have this program going in the right direction. He could have the first-year struggles. I think sitting here today, I'm going to give that one a loss. But, you pick up a win against Arkansas the following week. You got UMass. I am going to take the Vols in Knoxville. I think Missouri comes in, and I think Mississippi State gives a great fight in that game, but I've got Missouri winning that game. And the Egg Bowl, I'm never going to count out Mississippi State, no matter where the game is. Strange things happen in that game. I think sitting here today, I just give the home team a slight advantage. So I've got, I've got Mississippi State going 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got Mississippi State going 6-6. I think that's a pretty decent year right there under first-year head coach Jeff Lebby. You win that Texas A&M game, you're looking at 7-5. You could sneak up and get one of these other teams as well, like a Tennessee, like a Missouri. You knock off Lane Kiffin into the year, get another big win under Jeff Lebby's belt. But that Arizona State game is also going to be an interesting one. Just seeing where the program is at to start off. But I think that there's definitely an opportunity for success this year for Mississippi State. So I'm going to pull up Tennessee's schedule. I'll give my prediction. I want to hear your thoughts on it as well. Spoiler alert: we do not play UMass. So
weak.
Yeah, I know. We decided to play UT Chat and Kent State. Some of those teams. I think that Tennessee will have a good start to the season, starting off 3-0. That OU game is going to be a big one. Josh Heupel going into Oklahoma for the first time since he took over as the coach at Tennessee. So going to be a lot of emotion riding around that game. I do think sitting here today, I've got Oklahoma in a close one. Tennessee then travels to Fayetteville. I've got a win there for Tennessee. This is the swing game, in my opinion, for Tennessee, that Florida game. If Florida comes into Knoxville and beats Tennessee, there will be a riot. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that right now. That Florida seems to be a thorn in our side. And I know you can sit here and say Alabama too, but there's been years that Tennessee has been better than Florida and just got beat by them. So I think that's the swing game to see how the rest of the schedule is going to go. I do have Tennessee knocking off Alabama because it is in Knoxville. That's probably going to be the primetime game. And like I mentioned earlier, the primetime environments at night is just different in the SEC. I've got a win over Kentucky, Mississippi State. I've got a loss to Georgia in Athens before you pick up wins against UTEP and little brother Vanderbilt. So I've got 10-2 for Tennessee this year. I think the absolute floor this year for Tennessee should be 9-3. That this game right here against Alabama being that third loss. I could also see Tennessee going 11-1. Right now I'm not seeing a way that they go out and beat Georgia. Sitting here today, but I absolutely can see Tennessee going into Oklahoma and getting a win in Norman. But Skeeter, what are your thoughts on Tennessee's schedule this year?
Is that NC State? Is that a neutral site or is that in Knoxville?
Yes, that is neutral site game. That is in Charlotte.
Okay, that's one I would have be ready for as a Tennessee fan. Just bringing in a new quarterback if it's Nico, a really young new quarterback, and how quick he's able to process the game, the speed of it, what you see in practice in spring game is probably a fraction of what reality is. And so you can have all the skills in the world. If you can't process it between the ears at quarterback, your team can struggle. So I think y'all might lean a little bit more run heavy this year than you have in years past. But that's one I would have circled just to see where the year is going to go. Aside from that, I'm not a big Brett Venables fan at OU. I really don't think he has the capability to keep OU to the standard of what Bob Stoops did. So I think Tennessee should be able to go in there if they get to play from the quarterback. Arkansas would be a win. Florida a win. Alabama, let's see, that'd be the week after Georgia got them, right? I think. Or
no, they catch Georgia, I believe, the 21st, the same week as Tennessee plays Oklahoma. So it'll be a few weeks after.
All right. So by that point, we'll have a better understanding of Alabama. That's what, man, this year, aside from Georgia and Missouri, really, a lot of the big hitters replacing quarterback, changing coaches. It's so hard to really say because what last year and what the normal was isn't normal anymore. And so it is so hard to do these predictions right now because we're really uneducated and we're just throwing arrows in the dark. But I would have to say y'all beat Alabama because you're at home. Kentucky, Mark Stoops always seems to play Tennessee tough. But you don't know what they're going to have offensively there. So I would give that one to Tennessee. Mississippi State, sorry, Landon. I would have to say, looking at the roster, Tennessee's probably the better school. At Georgia, I can't bet against Kirby Smart until he gives me a reason to bet against him. The Miners of UTEP, Tennessee, and then Vanderbilt. Man, if y'all can get to 11 or 10 wins, you're basically getting 2 byes to close out the season to get ready for playoffs, if not SEC championship games. So there could be a lot of potential, or it can be limping into bowl season for you. I don't really want to say an expectation because there's just too much of it I don't know right now.
Yep, that's fair. Trey, what do you think on a Tennessee schedule? Just taking a look at it.
Yes, Skeeter kind of stole some of my thunder there. I was going to say, just looking real quick, that NC State, and I actually live in Charlotte. I know that being a neutral site game. NC State 2 hours away. I think they travel pretty good. I'm sure you guys travel as well, so that would be a good gauge. That's a night game too. They got a little hot at the end. I was looking at their schedule. I think they won 5 straight, lost the bowl game to Kansas. So that'd be a good gauge for you guys. That could be kind of a swing game. At Oklahoma's tough. Arkansas, you guys should handle them. I know Florida and Tennessee, you guys don't have the best record against them, but maybe and then out Alabama. But yeah, I like that 9-3, 10-2 range to be honest. If you can maybe split Georgia or Alabama, I think that would be a win-win for you guys.
Yeah, I agree there. Landon, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think we all are feeling NC State a little bit. That's going to be a tough game. I actually have NC State, or at least at this moment, winning that game. Grayson McCall transfers to NC State. He has a lot of experience. Nico will be very fresh into his tenure there. I think this is a great opportunity for NC State to sneak up and get Tennessee. Now, here's the good news. I think Tennessee is going to be 10-2, but they'll lose one early and lose one in the middle. I think they'll lose to NC State. But they'll win on the road against Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Florida, and I believe they'll beat Alabama. Or pardon me, yeah. But towards the end, but the last 3 weeks of the season, sorry. So at the beginning and at the end, I think they'll drop that game to Georgia. But by that point, Georgia, as we've all kind of predicted, will be probably in that top 7, certainly top 10 caliber of a team, and Tennessee will have had wins over Alabama and over Kentucky, who will probably be ranked over on the road against Oklahoma. So I think 10-2 is very possible and really sets Tennessee up for a good spot late in the season for the playoffs.
Yeah, and you guys mentioned North Carolina State there. I'm sitting here. I've looked at this schedule over and over again, and in Josh Heupel's first couple of years, there's always a game somewhere that he loses on the road that he probably shouldn't. And I haven't seen that game this year until y'all mentioned North Carolina State. And not that it's a true road game, but that's a neutral site game that, that could be that spot that I've been looking at. Okay, where can this happen? Because I've been trying to talk Arkansas up a little bit, saying, well, got to watch out for that one, the spot that it's in. But I can't talk myself into that one. But you guys mentioned North Carolina State. I think that would be the spot this year that if there's one to drop, it would be that one right there under Josh Heupel. But guys, appreciate you coming on tonight. We'll go one by one here. Skeeter, where can the folks find you at?
Well, before I do that real quick, I want to ask one more question if I can.
Okay, yeah.
What do y'all think is going to be the worst record that gets into the college football playoffs? Is it 10-2, 9-3, or what do y'all see on that?
Landon, you go first on that one.
Yeah, initially I'm thinking 9-3 because if anything, one of those I think is like an SEC school is going to be maybe one of those last teams in, and if that's the case, they would probably be around that 9-3, but maybe have some impressive wins. Teams that are coming from the outside are probably going to have to go undefeated and to kind of sneak in there. So I'm thinking 9-3 sounds doable for the last team in.
Trey, how about you?
Yeah, I agree with that. Also, maybe if they had maybe SEC somehow, that let's just say chaos and everybody beat each other up, and there was like 10-2 teams, the loser of the SEC championship game at like 10-3. If it was a close one, I could see them if they had a tough schedule, because it is the SEC and they did make it to the SEC championship game. I could probably see that, but I think it's going to be one of those. Last year it was everybody who's getting in the 4. It's going to be that 13th team that's left out and have a meltdown, and we should have got in. So there'll be all those scenarios. So, but I agree with them. I mean, I think like a 10-3 if they lose a conference championship, something like that.
Yeah, I'm also going to say 9-3. In years past, you get to that 12 spot right there, and most of the time that team is either 9-3 or sometimes you have 8-4 right there. But this past year you had just complete chalk, and you had, I think you had a team sitting at 15th, maybe, that was 10-2. I can't remember that for sure, but I know you had like Ole Miss sitting there at 10-2. Oklahoma, I think, was also 10-2, 9-3, somewhere around there, sitting in that 11-12 range. So you're not going to get that every single year. So I'll say 9-3 as well. I don't see a world where 8-4 can get into a 12-team playoff. So I'm going to say 9-3 is probably the worst record. Skeeter, what do you think?
Well, I pulled up last year's rankings at the end of championship weekend or conference championship weekend, and at number 12 you have OU 10-2. LSU would have been on that side looking in at 9-3, but keep in mind that they're going to move a group, the highest finishing group of 5, so that kicks either Mizzou, Penn State, Ole Miss, OU were all sitting there at 10-2. So you gotta pull a straw on one of them and say, hey, you're not making it, and that's not even going through and looking at if there's a team below that won their conference championship of the Big 12 or anybody like that. But I think it's going to be interesting to keep an eye on. I always go back to the 2007 college football season. as anything can happen. If there was a year that something could happen, that was the year it seemed to be. And heck, that year there might have been a 5-loss team going to the playoffs.
Yeah.
I don't know, but appreciate you letting me on. Woods Water Mizzou. We're on all major streaming platforms. We're on Instagram, YouTube, on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, at Mizzou Pod. If you're like Trey's age and you use Facebook still, the Woods Water Mizzou. Sorry, Trey. I had to get one little jab in there, but
I do use Facebook.
If you use Facebook, Woods Water Mizzou on there. So appreciate y'all having me on.
Trey, where can folks find you at?
Yeah, we're at Doghouse Talk on Twitter or X. We are at Doghouse Podcast on YouTube. Really trying to grow that. Hopefully, the road to 400. I think we got 350 plus, which is good. And then Instagram. Trying to get all my handles in here is Doghouse Pod. And then also we're on Spotify. Even though I've tried the Apple Play thing, and I don't know if there's an issue with my account. I've even tried to call in. So anyway, we're on Spotify too. Doghouse Podcast.
Yeah, Landon, where can folks find you?
Yeah, so you can find us on all major streaming platforms on the My Dawgs Are Barking podcast. On X, Twitter, it is at My Dawgs Pod. And like kind of similar to Trey, man, looking to grow on YouTube specifically. I think I'm still at under 100. I think I'm at 85 or 84 subs or something like that. So shout out to my mom and all of her 84 accounts. That's pretty cool. No, I'm joking, but always thrilled to be able to talk college football, man. It's always a great time.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can find myself and Skylar, Vol Fanatic Show on YouTube, Spotify, Apple. We're also on Facebook. And, Skeeter, you joke about Facebook. That's actually where our biggest following is Facebook. So, we are Vol Fanatic Show on Facebook, Instagram, at Vol Fanatics 1998 on Twitter. Landon, you made a joke about your mom and all her YouTube accounts. Most of our subscribers on YouTube are just family that got on there and used all their burner accounts and stuff too. So, excited to start this. What'd you say, Trey?
It counts.
Hey, exactly. All it does is just build stuff up. So,
hey, if you're getting close to 1,000, you start bringing up people from the dead. Hey, you got to get to 1,000 so I can get monetized.
Yeah, yeah, that's the truth there. But guys, excited to start this journey of the College Huddle with you guys. All of us are part of the new College Huddle. Obviously, we are streaming this. This is the SEC on the College Huddle. We appreciate you guys tuning in tonight, and tune in again next week, Thursday night at 8 Central Time.